It's simple. Step 1, eat the chips. Step 2, get yelled at. Step 3, Step 4, how you doing, Lays? In this sponsored video, I'm kidding, chip eaters and makers, internet, my name is Peridiam and welcome. If you're new to the channel, I will be spoiling the entirety of this season top to bottom, so be warned. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Or don't, just lend me your ear and I will tell you what happened. I'll be covering the pre-jury, post-jury, finale, twist, cast, and a lot in between, so let's not delay. We have got a lot to talk about. Here's my review for Big Brother 24. Every so often, seasons of my favorite reality shows come along and just knock it out of the park. I'm talking high up in the air, off in the distance, it's going, it's gone. Apologies to the Tesla in the parking lot, I'm sure your dad will buy you a new one. The problem for me is that I only have two favorite reality shows, and the number of times I have watched a live season of Big Brother do just that is countable on one hand. 2 years ago, I ranked every season of Big Brother US, and I was somewhat shocked at the disparity between old and new. Most of the old seasons were in the upper half, newer ones, not so much. And I don't think it's because of the live feeds, I think it's much more than that. So how do I reconcile spending so much time enjoying a show that when compared to its former self, a body of work I never witnessed live and didn't invest nearly as much time into, it often doesn't stack up? Are my standards lower? Are they two different shows? I've had to ask myself, what even makes a season good? What keeps me hooked, coming back every year? After last year, I resigned myself to just accepting that, as Turner would put it, modern Big Brother is mid. At best. And so that brings us to Big Brother 24. Coming in, anticipating a bunt with low expectations off another home run from Big Brother Canada, what did BBUS have in store this time around? Well, we got Night 1 live feeds, which is a continued massive step up. As an avid live feed viewer, I cannot say enough about how good this edition is. Actually, I will say, coming off VB Can, the live feed experience is just on another level stateside. The live move-in premiere is exciting, if not janky, a little slow, with a lot of standing around and waiting for queue. It's a big live competition full to the brim with potty humor, Nickelodeon slime, awkward forced intros, and me counting down the clock until it's over so I can turn on the feeds. And when those Big Brother 24 feeds turned on, oh, honey roasted blindside butterbeans, we had no idea what we were in for. Which is partially our own fault. We saw the theater kids at BB23 and thought we would get another likable group of animated misfits. But no, we're putting on the clown makeup. That clown meme? We're the clowns. Is this clockwork? Did we learn nothing from last season? Right off the bat, we saw a Girls Alliance form without two of them included, one of them being the primary target. And cut. Yep, we've learned nothing. History is doomed to repeat itself. The first week of Big Brother 24 was rough. The episodes were rough, the feeds were rougher, and the treatment of Taylor was getting worse and worse as the days went by. If you only watched the episodes, you missed a lot of the devolution of this cast's reputation. It was the most eye-opening example I have ever fully seen of a player being treated so poorly for so little. For remarking on a pineapple falling on the floor. For wearing an outfit other players asked her to wear. For having her words spun to mean something they didn't, and people taking egregious offense, yes, snowflakes, constantly, over and over. For being mislabeled as explosive, everyone thought that she was gonna lose her shit and flip out and get aggressive. Y'all, even if you don't care about that, I gotta say it was bewildering the difference between who Taylor was, the things she did, and the things she was said to have been doing. I have never seen a wider disparity on the feeds, and I've been watching for 12 years. But unfortunately, I would say this treatment isn't exactly next level because, well, we've seen it before in previous seasons, and we got it all from Night 1. And it did not let up. And most of it didn't happen to her face. It was subtle. It was in the other's body language, their distance. And it eventually culminated in Taylor isolating herself in the bathroom from everyone else in a house of 16 where there's nowhere to hide, to cry. She didn't even know exactly why she was, just that she could feel it. That is the tricky caveat as I analyze this cast. The default setting these players brought into the game was pretty bad, for lack of a better word. It soured me on a lot of them, and it took weeks for them to recover in my eyes. But as one fan, I want to just say I want to forgive and maybe forget. Can a zebra change its stripes? Am I going to need another round of clown makeup? The good news is people can change, forgiveness can be earned, and I can make peace when a little bit of retributive justice is back on the menu. Truth be told, this was an odd cast. Even in the final weeks, it felt like a group of individual strangers over a collective family. Nobody was ever too comfortable. There was always like a silence permeating in between conversations, and I actually didn't mind this because it kept most players from getting lost in the sauce of groupthink on a gameplay level. The first week notwithstanding, obviously. A roller coaster of an experience. I went weeks loving half the cast, genuinely rooting for them. Turner, Monty, Michael, Brittany, Kyle, Joseph, and even the non-leftovers had their moments. Alyssa would like spontaneously start spitting fire like she was back in week 1, like the true contender I thought she was. Jasmine was a whole ass character and a half. Her birthday, Muffingate, the scooter, the cane, in the pool. When Jasmine was leaning on her good foot, she was irreplaceable. Terrence even lorded over the backyard during Direfest and had his moment in the sun. The pre-jury was full of big brother villains from a TV sense who got their comeuppance. Daniel was 6'3" and mad as hell. Nicole was 41 and definitely not a former cop, and how dare Taylor ask her if her mother's doing okay. Even Pooch was blindsided after asking to be a pawn. It doesn't get more classic than that, and I can appreciate what these players brought to the show and the story of this season. And not just after the fact, also during these weeks as they were happening. And consider the first week, where we all began, where Paloma, the meanest girl in the house, forms an all-girl alliance but leaves the eventual winner of the season out of it. Taylor is mistreated, but through some cosmic irony, Paloma sends herself packing after spiraling from a lack of sleep and what appeared to be an onset of psychosis. The episodes did not have the time to show just how severe her state was getting, because it was a lot. But by that same measure, that is the frustrating part about the presentation of Big Brother, particularly in the first week and how the cast treated Taylor. It wants to try to trivialize the rougher parts of these players by bundling their experience into a 2-minute segment rife with wacky sound effects and scripted diary rooms. The editing very rarely goes deep, because the show doesn't take itself very seriously, even though the situations in the house are no laughing matter. I mean, not all the time. By design, the tri-weekly 42 minutes never desire to show the reality because it sometimes doesn't line up with the marketing of the show, and it's all at the expense of the millions of watchers who never get the real story, who don't spend a lot of time watching the live feeds. Because isn't it unfortunate that almost the entire cast is showing their ugly side out of the gate? Gosh, whoever would have thought that reality isn't always full of wacky sound effects and scripted confessionals. But take into consideration, Paloma likely leaves whether she walks or not, because the backstage twist would have resulted in her versus Taylor, and given how we saw that competition play out on the episode, it would have just been a 1v1 duel and we saw Taylor smoke it. It's fascinating how everything landed where it did by the end of this week, regardless. The backstage boss twist was one of the worst ever created in Big Brother history. I say that sincerely, it was bad. A voted out player gets saved arbitrarily and then goes into a duel with another random pick. Why can't we just let the vote fall where it may? In all of the infinite ways this show can slice itself, don't touch the final vote. Create situations where tension and drama impact the nominations, the veto ceremony, anything. But a night one random twist where everyone was in the dark at every turn all week, including us in the audience? Please don't bring this back. Actually, let's just rip the band-aid off. Shocker, I did not care for the Festy Besties either. Do you remember the Festy Besties in the pre-jury? Imagine taking the strategy of the cookout or the brigade and turning it into a twist. Now everyone from the outside is stuck with somebody on the inside and there's nothing they can do no matter what. People will forget about this because they were rooting for the leftovers, as I was too, but that doesn't change the obvious fact that you put this twist on any other season, and it is universally disliked because it only encourages the status quo. Oh wait, no, we liked those players, so it doesn't matter, right? That's how we determine whether a twist is good or not. The detonators, grateful, the committee, they would be indebted to the producers for including this twist. Serving up the outsiders on a silver platter, only saved on BB24 by the outsiders being less likable. On the other hand, I was okay with the split house twist at the final 10, Brochella and Direfest. It took a twist from Survivor, where they split the merged tribe into 2 groups and gave us a week-long spectacle to watch it play out. I mean, I was mostly just excited to see how they were logistically going to even make this work. Well, except for when the feeds went down to drown out a wall yeller. The final 5 can be one of the most intense rounds of any BB season, and we got it here this year. But with 3 3 instances instead of just 1. It was tense to watch the outsiders scramble in the bleak conditions, scrapping to survive with nowhere to hide. It led to a massive overhaul of the house structure, and all the while the insiders had no idea what was happening. It was a song of ice and fire, and the heat was turning up. And that is not something I can often say for every season of this show. This twist led to one of the wildest final 8 rounds ever, when the subterfuge within the two groups reforming became so important. The season expedited an elimination, and then 2 worlds collided. But it was not perfect, as a subscriber of mine, Josh.com, pointed out in their own video. I'll link their video in the description below. I recommend checking it out, as I agree with the downsides there, and they go into a lot more detail about it. The picking of the team should have been random. If you let the players decide what to do, they're just going to optimize the fun and the randomness and the drama out of it. The conditions as well outside should have been better. Come on, producers. And I think both sides, probably this is more of a me thing, they should have switched halfway into the week to experience both sides of the coin. I thought that could have made the twist even more exciting. There's definitely room to improve it, but I would be okay with this twist coming back. But not Festy Besties, because that's the thing. BB24's pre-jury was great in spite of its twists. Taylor survives week 1, Pooch asks to get nominated in all of his hubris, then gets blindsided, and I was like, okay, this isn't so bad of a week. One of the best weeks of BB23 was Brent getting blindsided, but Pooch's eviction was pretty much the same thing, and it was a footnote on this season. And then we get to one of the greatest coups in the history of the show, and now that the season is over, I can say it's the greatest. The leftovers forming that night was one of the most excited I have ever been watching the show or the feeds, and it wasn't me rooting against anyone, but instead rooting for so many people at the same time. Day 44 on BB21 was a spectacle, but I would take the formation of the leftovers every day of the week. The way the dominoes fell so perfectly, beat by beat, you couldn't make this stuff up. The veto ceremony was incredible. The fallout was next level. Chaos erupted, and I was making popcorn. Or should I say, blindside butterbeans. And of course, we had the continued poor treatment of Taylor by these pre-jurors, but hey, at least this time she held some power, and we in the audience knew what was coming. Amira was blindsided, and while she will always be known as one of the earliest players to go with untapped potential, I can't say I wasn't excited for the future of this season. And even when the season could have slowed down, it didn't. Alyssa was slated to go next, and yet Daniel fell into his own trap of reverse psychology and used the veto to blindside Nicole, his #1 ally, whom he thought he was protecting by doing the one thing that would seal her fate. Again, so juicy, so dramatic. You can't make this stuff up. Top it off with Daniel going next week, and the game was quickly leading up to a leftover civil war. Fittingly, Taylor winning the wall comp HOH was not the best timing for her game, but damn did it make that week fun to watch. Sometimes bad Big Brother is good Big Brother. The Alyssa and Kyle of it all was floating to the surface, heating up in the most expected of ways. Half of a showmance was being asked to blindside its other half, and that's rarely ever gonna happen. Kyle didn't want to burn Alyssa, despite wanting to for weeks leading up to this point, advocating for her to go more than anyone else in the leftovers, but still, Kyle put his foot down and did not use that veto. The chaos of this week was a lot to make sense of, mostly from a strategic point of view. Joseph was just all over the map, Taylor was pulled from all directions, eventually shackled to Joseph in one of the funnier bits of circumstance. Michael and Brittany were playing a classic floating game between two sides of the same alliance, pitting them against one another, hoping to ride the middle, and all the while you had Indy and Jasmine just kind of trying to hold on for dear life. Indy scrambles at the last second and gets evicted as collateral before she can throw any hot soup around, and we enter the split house twist. I already covered this part, but I will say that Joseph leaving here both sucked because I was rooting for him, but was also riveting to watch play out on the feeds in like slow motion. For an entire month, the leftovers had been concealed. They were Big Brother 24, and suddenly Kyle pivoted and everything changed. Just like weeks ago when Alyssa told him about the old school alliance leading to the creation of the leftovers, Kyle once again hit the backyard ground running and formed the After Party, a new endgame alliance to place himself in a fairly strong position come the final 8. That being said, Kyle riding the leftovers to the end would have also likely resulted in him being in a very strong position given he had the Pound, who were clearly loyal to him, and outside of Michael winning every competition, which we saw did not happen, Kyle was golden. At this point, I felt like he could have been the winner. Sure, he protected Alyssa and somehow chose the road more traveled despite it making it seem like it was the road less traveled, but it was still working. until it wasn't. The funny thing about this part of the season is that the same reasons Kyle fractured the leftovers and split off from them at the split house are the same reasons he ultimately lost the game. In a game about social politicking, just the same as Taylor in week 1, what you say and do can be used against you regardless of whether it's justified or not. Kinda goes without saying, but Big Brother is ultimately a game and we have to view the game through that critical lens, and with rules so loosely defined, morality and ethics tend to get stretched and bent and broken and ignored. And so, we get to the Kyle and Michael of it all, when Michael had his back against the wall and brought up Kyle's own words from weeks ago as a means to go nuclear. Because Kyle speculated about the possibility of a Cookout 2.0 existing, and given he had only seen BB23 and was Kyle, I'm not too surprised he reached this conclusion. Kyle didn't understand the Cookout don't exist in a vacuum. Their alliance won't be transplanted from season to season. For the same reason that we have never had all-white alliances forming on the basis of their race, at least not explicitly, or other people of color who just don't have enough people in their cast anyway to make this even a possibility. I don't think we're ever going to see another Cookout, because the Cookout only formed due to the circumstances leading up to it. They had a single cause and they prevailed, and I don't think future players of any race are going to co-opt that same cause when it no longer exists. Perhaps goalposts could get moved, but we'll see. And this isn't really about the Cookout, just that Kyle misunderstood them and now understands that he did. Taking that cause and placing it on the Big Brother 24 cast was a bad call. And I'm not talking about the idle speculation or the errant thoughts, which I think, as many people would say, including the Cookout, are understandable. But to levy something like that requires evidence. To act on that requires evidence. Kyle did both in small ways over the span of weeks. And I'm not proud to admit this, but I would watch Kyle on the live feeds as he stood in the shower for minutes. Hi Kyle, if you're watching, just staring at the wall, twirling his hair, totally lost in thought. He would do this for a long time. He was mapping out everything. He was paranoid. He was jumping at shadows, afraid of a boogeyman that he himself created out of a misunderstanding. Because the Big Brother 24 cast did not have that cause, and nobody else in the cast ever once suspected that it was a thing. And it wasn't. I think that simple fact gets lost in all of this. I have faith Kyle gets it. I think he does, and I'll leave it at that. On the flip side, Michael and Brittany, not letting you off the hook, from my perspective, as proud of them as I was for hacking comps, they definitely teetered on the line of looking like full-blown opportunists. I get these situations are complicated. You've got this weird, uncomfortable situation on your lap. You're not sure what to do. You may not even realize just how big a deal it is until later on down the line. I know Michael placated Kyle at first, which was not a good look, and then the timing of the reveal gave me this uncomfortable feeling, also not a good look. If it mattered so much now, why was it concealed so much then? And why say if Kyle was evicted, you would never reveal it at all? I know there's nuance in between all of this, but it really got me thinking about these tricky ethical subjects. Where do you draw the line between acceptable and unacceptable, especially when you analyze it through the critical lens of a game? Is this good gameplay? Did this burn jury votes? Was it a Pyrrhic victory? You win the battle but lose the war? And where should morals come into play? Because I know from looking at social media, not everyone has the same answer, and there's a lot of people out there with a lot of opinions and a lot of voices. Most seasons of Big Brother don't cut this deep, not to this degree, with this morally gray landscape where players I was rooting for, such as Taylor and Monty, were both saved and deeply hurt by all of this. There's a decent chance Monty goes home if not for Michael and Brittany's timing, and also Michael winning the veto. And I'm just over here trying to reconcile all of this and make sense of it. Can two wrongs make a right? Do the ends justify the means? I don't have the answers, but I will say that I think a part of all of this is what makes this show what it is. Compelling, complicated, and sometimes damn good TV. And sometimes not so much. That said, if nothing else, I do not agree with Kyle's takes and do not like the timing of Michael and Brittany, and I would hope future house guests consider these subjects with a little more thought going forward. And then we had arguably the best double eviction in BBUS history. Michael leaving right as he tied Janelle's 16-year comp record was insane. 9 comp wins in a single season. He had played the same number of comps as Janelle and lost on the same last comp Janelle did. I bet you Michael beasts his way to the end if not for that one loss, but then there's something to be said about managing threat level as you get deeper into the game. Still, though, it did hurt to see Michael fight so hard and get this far being such a superfan as he was, only to then have his rope break in that comp and then maneuver so fast on live TV trying to stay above water. One of the best exits we have ever seen in 24 seasons. And then we get to the final five, the third one, where Brittany wins a comp channeling her inner Michael and then flips on Taylor only to get stopped short by Turner burning Alyssa and throwing away his entire endgame down the toilet. Y'all, we were this close to seeing a pity vote make a world of a difference, and Brittany was fighting in those final weeks to do anything she could, and I was here for it. Meanwhile, Turner was playing very emotionally, ruining his jury management, getting controlled by Monty. Alyssa showed us more game in her than ever, despite hitting every branch of the tree on the way down to get here. That woman was in a constant state of being blindsided all season, can't even catch a break when her life depended on one of her closest allies needing to save her. And it was for the betterment of his own game. One of my favorite final fives ever. And then even the final four for those first few days, with Taylor clutching out the HOH comp and a tiebreaker and seeing how close these women were to beating Monty in any given comp. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, after 80 days. That's all it comes down to. Brittany is on the feeds mapping out the entire season with Candy, putting together a PowerPoint presentation of the century, and Taylor's getting into a showmance and gently pulling Monty away from Turner. Monty's heart really grew soft in those final weeks, and man did he let those women convince him Turner was this massive threat when he was very much not. And then the finale. Monty wins the final HOH by a hair, unleashes a dagger to the heart of Turner when he cuts him at the final three. Monty was crying the night before to Taylor about having to do this, letting him down easy. And all the while, both of these guys were convinced they were each other's biggest threat, when the reality was their biggest threat wasn't even competing against them in the final competition of this summer. Because make no mistake, Taylor's jury Q&A and final speech was the best the show has ever seen. I think even Andy Herron would understand that is a fair take. It wasn't yelling at the top of her lungs, it wasn't trying to state all the big moves and the resume builders. It was honest, earnest, from the heart, it was practiced, it was tempered, and it was all true. And the jury didn't even need to hear it, but they got it. They knew she deserved it most. They knew if she was in the final two, she deserved their vote. And each of them gave that to her. Even Terrence, where did that come from? As one last parting gift. I don't think the meta of the game has changed here with Taylor winning, at least not yet. But it needs to be said that a good story can and should go miles. Especially in an environment where there's no script beyond the diary room. Nobody asked for Taylor to be treated so poorly in those first weeks. Nobody asked for the leftovers to split when they did under the nuclear circumstances they did. Least of all Taylor losing Joseph without a goodbye. Nobody asked for retribution to manifest itself, especially when nobody wanted it to be needed in the first place. And yet, even in the most unpredictable of places, in a studio lot somewhere in LA, can you find all of this and have it mean something for so many people and have it pay off in the end? Because seasons like Big Brother 24 are not the usual. We may never get one like it again. The stars aligned to create a serendipitous journey and outcome you may only ever find written beforehand or, again, in the diary room. When Survivor and Big Brother shine, they shine bright. And it's all of this drama, all of these heartbreaks and unjust steps along the way, filled with unlikely coups and beautiful victories. It's the very real risk of loss and of having and once had that make this show worth caring about. As we often note, you can have flaws, problems, but wow me in the end and you've got a hit. But producers, don't cheat. No insane twists or superpowers, no Deus Ex Machinas. The characters must change and the change must come from them. And I think if any season of Big Brother can do that, it'll be fine. At the top of the video, I asked what makes a season good. And to me, that's the answer I was looking for. And in the case of BB24, it did all of that and more. It gave us a damn good story that we'll never likely see again, because you can't write this stuff, and therein lies the beauty.
Congratulations, Taylor! You are the winner of Big Brother!
Even though I've already ranked the seasons of Big Brother, in case you're wondering, I will still retroactively fit BB24 somewhere in my rankings as of right now. I asked some of my fans where they would rank it, and surprisingly over 80% of you said that it's in your top half, some even higher. Well, throughout the season, I fluctuated with where it would fall. Prior to the double with Terrence and Michael going, I had it as high as 7th. Going into the finale, I contemplated it cracking my top 5. But now, with the finale in the books, I've placed it even higher. But because of recency bias, I won't say it's at the top, but for now, I will be putting it at number 3. Fittingly above Big Brother 3 from exactly 20 years ago. The finale was my favorite finale of any season. By far my favorite live finale I have ever watched. Taylor, after 85 days ago and not knowing who you were, congratulations on winning the season and AFH and being one of my favorite winners. You didn't ask for much, just a chance, but you were the face, the heart, and the sword of the season. And thank you for never giving up, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. You were the realm's delight, and I wouldn't have it any other way. A big thank you to my patrons for all your support. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to get your sponsorship deal on your way out, and I will see you in the next one. Once I come to terms with the fact that BB25 has its work cut out for it. Anybody want lays?
Chips before workout?
Just stop. From this point on, just stop.
With the Lays?
Are you still there? Can I also have a bubble bath, like a very bubbly bubble bath? Okay, now I'm done. Bye.